And today I'm joined by someone whose work has touched classrooms, caucus meetings, and countless conversations across Melbourne's Bowley West. Joanne Ryan, MP, federal member for Lalor and Chief Government Whip. With talk of a promotion on the horizon, we are going deeper into her leadership journey, her advocacy for better infrastructure and healthcare, and the immigration issues close to many local hearts. Joanne.
Good morning, Shama.
Welcome.
Thank you, Shama, and a big hello to everyone who's listening this morning.
Let's get right into it.
Okay, let's do that.
There will be a cabinet reshuffle and your name's been mentioned. Can you tell us how you're feeling about it?
What I'm focused on right now, Shama, and all I'm feeling about anything is being at pre-poll for as many hours as I can, making sure that it's me as often as possible that hands out a vote for me, for the Labor Party, into the hands of our voters in the electorate of Lalor. So I'm focused on making sure that I win this seat, making sure that we win government is what I'm absolutely focused on. Because if I'm not the member for Lalor, then I'm not the member for anything.
Do you feel like that the party is looking for new voices to step up in leadership?
I think we're all focused on making sure that we retain government. Leadership in opposition does not have the same value for the people that I represent. A Labor government is first and foremost what the people in the electorate of Lalor need. They need a government focused on getting the cost of living crisis under control. They need a government focused on making sure that while we do that, inflation isn't triggered and that we're pushing inflation down like we have done for the last 3 years. It needs a government focused on balanced immigration and infrastructure funding that supports the areas like our community, the growth corridors where that immigration means that we have new houses every day. But it also means that we need a federal government who's prepared to make the contribution to support those communities. And that's why we need a Labor federal government.
You have built a strong relationship within caucus. How important is that kind of trust when stepping into a bigger role?
Look, my role as Chief Whip obviously is a step up from the role that I had in opposition, which was one of the whips, so like an assistant whip. So becoming Chief Whip means that my relationships across the caucus obviously deepen. It's a support role where I support particularly new members of the caucus as they came into the caucus and learn the ropes and establish their relationships. So it's a lot of pastoral care for other MPs, as well as a disciplinary role in terms of making sure that we're all united, making sure that our ideas have been thrashed out and thrashed through, so that ministers know if caucus members are uneasy about something or need to discuss something further, or if people really want to have an open conversation, then I'm often that conduit between the caucus backbench and the front bench. It's an important role. It's a role that I absolutely relish doing. Doing pastoral care for people obviously is something I've done all my professional life as a teacher and as a principal. So it takes it to another level in I suppose, higher risk, higher stakes in a caucus. But it's a role that I relish, giving people support, empowering people to have the conversations that they should and need to have, and having those relationships with our Prime Minister, Anthony Albanese, and with everyone on the front bench. And I think that's borne out if you look at how many visits we've had from front benchers in this election campaign. I have been absolutely buoyed by the support that I've had from members of the front bench. From the Prime Minister coming to the electorate, to the Foreign Minister, Penny Wong came to the electorate. We've had, across the 3 years of government, many front benchers come, but in the last few weeks, our flurry. Daniel Plibiscik was here last week. Minister Amanda Rishworth has been in the electorate as well. It really has been a time where they get to see our community, and when they're here, my role is to make sure that we're not just doing announcements, but that, you know, if you take, for instance, the number of times Minister Catherine King has been here on the infrastructure, she knows our infrastructure needs well. She stood on points in this electorate and seen the growth coming over the hill. So when she comes to announce the bridge between Tarneit and Wyndham Vale, her excitement matches mine. She's so excited to be making a contribution to this community. It's just fantastic, the support that we've had.
The public transport is the biggest issue. and the public hospitals and the health system. So, what are your plans about that, if you be?
Okay, so let's take those one at a time. I'll finish that infrastructure piece if you'd like. One of the things that concerned me in 9 years of opposition, so 9 years under the Liberal governments, was those decisions that they were making about the growth of our community, but without supporting us with the infrastructure that we needed. So we had basically a decade without any major contribution from a federal government. Prior to that, under a Labor federal government, Anthony Albanese, as the Minister for Infrastructure, developed the regional rail link. So if you go back, and I know many in our community weren't here 10 years ago, weren't living in this community 10 years ago, but 10 years ago, when we lost government, we were on the verge of opening the regional rail link, which of course incorporates the Wyndham Vale and Tarneet stations and goes through to Geelong. Now the plan there was a second railway line, obviously. It was to service our new and emerging suburbs, Wyndham Vale with the potential for growth. Well, now the growth is here. Tarneet with that potential for growth. When those stations opened, there wasn't a house in sight. I remember being on that train and going through there with Anthony when we'd become opposition. And, I remember that a state Liberal government forgot to order the trains. So it was delayed in opening from what we'd planned in government. So being back in government, it gives us an opportunity to do those big infrastructure pieces again. State government are responsible for developing the stations that go along that line now, and I know there are plans for a new station in Truganina and another new station in Tarneet West that I'll leave both Sarah Connolly and Dylan White to explain as the state members there. But it's exciting to think that we're getting that back on track. So things like the commitment I made at the last election, $57 million to support the Ison Road Bridge. And that bridge is finished, not yet open, because state government are working on the road between it and the freeway. So we come in this time with a $125 million commitment from the federal government, matched by the state government, to fix that problem that we've got on that M1 main road intersection. So people in Tarneet won't particularly be aware of it, but everybody who lives in Manor Lakes and Wyndham Vale will be aware that when you take that exit in the afternoon now, there's traffic waiting, and that's dangerous. So this commitment will get that moving quickly. There's that one. There's also unravelling the Greens Road, McGrath's Road and Balan Road roundabout, which is a real choke point out there for people coming in from Manor Lakes where we've got that new growth. There's a $41 million commitment from the federal government, matched by the state government, to fix that intersection, put the lights in so that it's no longer a roundabout, so that one entry point doesn't dominate that roundabout, and getting it moving properly. So there's that. And then finally, that commitment at the M1 main road interchange would see the completion of stage 1 of what I call Wyndham's Ring Road. That will see that completion. And then the commitment to the bridge over the river between Tarneet and Wyndham Vale, Manor Lakes, that will see the beginning of stage 2 of the Ring Road. And I'm hoping, absolutely hoping, that by the time we reach the next commitment, if Labor's successful this time, that we'll have completed that Ring Road by the next election. Now, that's the really important piece though, and it's the piece I want people to really understand. Right now, the Liberal Party, as potentially the alternative government, have not matched one of those commitments. They have not matched one. Now, if they are seriously running in this seat, if they seriously want to be the government, then they need to match those commitments. They need to say that they back that Ring Road in and that they will fund it. So I'd like right now to call on the Liberal candidate to do just that. On pre-poll today, announce that you're going to match those things. Because then if I'm the member for Lalor, but we have a Liberal government, then I can demand that they complete that Ring Road. That's something powerful that the Liberal Party locally could do right now.
Schools are also under pressure.
Yes.
Now, what are the plans for schools?
So as you know, Sharma, and as most people who meet me around the community, I understand that the two important things, if we put aside the economy, the two important things locally are health and education. So let's talk about the health piece for a moment, and then I can talk about the education. The health piece, we've got a really good story to tell. The last term of the Liberal government, they cut Wyndham out of the DPA. That meant that our local GP services could no longer be part of the accreditation processes for overseas doctors. It actually resulted in 30% loss of GPs from our services here, and meant that we had a reduction in bulk billing as GP clinics struggled to meet demand. So they put prices up. That's what happened. We put that DPA back the minute we were elected, and it is making a difference on the ground right now. As I go and visit GP clinics, I'm meeting new doctors who are doing their accreditation by doing the long service hours, so the after hours services, if you like, and GP clinics are happier because they're getting more doctors. And we know that when doctors come here from overseas and when they do those after hours services here to get their Australian accreditation, we know they put down roots. We know they buy a house locally, and we know they start their families here. We know they stay. This is the key to us having our medical needs met, because we know that GP services provide preventative medicine and keep people out of hospitals. That's what the medical system's about. So from a federal perspective, that's our role. Our role is to make sure that we strengthen Medicare and that we have enough GPs on the ground to ensure that bulk billing gets returned to where it is. Now, we've made a commitment that if we're re-elected, we will put every cent back into Medicare that has been trashed for 9 years under the Liberals and get that moving again. We have done tripled the bulk billing incentive in regional areas. It has worked. Now we're going to roll it out across the country if we're re-elected, and that will make a real difference. That will mean bulk billing rates up, cost of seeing a doctor down. That means we'll drive less people to the emergency department because they'll be able to pay to see their GP. And also, of course, we've already got an urgent care clinic here in Werribee that's already seen 20,000 patients since it began work and taken enormous pressure off our emergency department. So the role that the federal government plays there, the last piece of that is we've signed an agreement with every state and territory around funding for public hospitals. So the federal government doesn't run public hospitals, but we do, in partnership with the states, provide funding for them. And this is the point we've been making, that while Peter Dutton was Minister for Health, he cut $50 billion in the 2014 budget out of public hospitals, out of support for state governments. And we've just signed an agreement that increases that money for our state government, which we should see translate into support for public hospitals in Victoria. So the other piece, I suppose, is around that education piece. So the federal government doesn't build schools and doesn't run the schools. State governments run state schools and independent schools are run independently, as we know. But the Commonwealth does have a role in funding them. So we've just signed, again, an agreement with all states and territories around school funding that finally sees, after 15 years, what we call the student resource standard. And that's a figure across the nation. In Victoria, that means that every state school student, every student in Victoria will have that minimal student resource standard met, so that every child will be funded appropriately. So every school will get more funds. Again, an agreement we've just done. That will see targeted support in schools to support students, to make sure that we're making sure that every student meets their potential. The other piece around education, away from schools, if you like, is a re-elected Labor government will reduce every student's HECS debt. All people with a current HECS debt will have 20% wiped from that HECS debt. That's an average for $5,000 for people with a HECS debt across the country. Really important in our community, something that I'm really passionate about, and something that I know many young people here will celebrate if a Labor government is elected again. Really important. We've already reduced some of that, fixed the indexation issue that was happening. This is a further commitment that we'll make on top of that. I'm not just confident about what our future commitments difference they'll make, like free TAFE, because we already know that over 3,000 young people are accessing that in our community now, and I've visited a few of them with Minister Andrew Giles quite recently. We know that the cost of living measures that we've put in place, the cheaper medicines, the tax relief for every taxpayer, not just some, we know that in the outer suburbs they've made the biggest difference already. So that people who live in Wyndham are already getting benefit from a Labor government. They return a Labor government, that benefit will increase.
There's an issue close to many families in the local area, parents' visa delays.
Yes.
And the cost of it.
It's one of those interesting points where we've gotten in this election campaign, if you like, Sharma. We've got a leader of the opposition who's been running around doing a lot of backflips. Yes, says one thing one day, another the next day. Take, for instance, the working from home, where, the unions would argue that to force public servants to go back to work and not be able to have those flexible arrangements of working from home, you have to pass legislation that would mean the rule would apply to everyone. I know how many people in our community are working from home. I know it works for families here. I know that it reduces the cost of transport, reduces pressure on our transport system, and it works for drop-off and pick-up. I can't imagine. I've met families before the working from home, pre-COVID, if you like, families doing drop-off at childcare at 6 a.m. and pickups at 6 p.m. before they go home and cook dinner. If you're now in a position where even for 2 days a week you have the flexibility to work from home, you've taken pressure off. So I think it's really disappointing to see the Leader of the Opposition take that view without asking, without going across the community and saying, who's working from home, what do you think about it? It's really short-sighted. The other point, he's come out very strong trying to make a political issue out of immigration. It's really disappointing to see a Leader of the Opposition do this in our multicultural community, in our country that's known for its immigration policies. It's really disappointing. What we need in immigration is balance. What we need is to make sure that we're getting the skilled migrants that we need in the areas that we need to support our growing economy. What we need is to make sure that we don't turn off the tap on international students, because our universities value that, and we are valued around the world for that, and it's an industry that is worth billions of dollars to Australia. And our visitors come with tourist dollars in their pockets, and that is part of the economy as well. So to have a Leader of the Opposition who seems to me to be wanting to say that he wants to drive immigration down, but he never points to the areas of immigration or the areas in terms of the NOM, which is the number of people coming into Australia. He never gives a specific about who that is. Now, I'm sorry for the opposition leader, but if you're not prepared to say who it is you're going to stop crossing the border, then your position's not defensible. So all I can say is, if he's looking to cut, who's he cutting? Who's not going to be allowed to come into the country? And the easiest targets are long-stay para visas. So I'm not saying the man has said that. What I'm saying is he hasn't ruled it out. And what I'm saying is that in our community, we know the value of our parents visiting on those long-stay visas. We know the value. We know the support they give families, but we also know the tourist dollar that comes into the country. You know, I know how many families take off in the car and head down to Warrnambool and do the Great Ocean Road and stop and take people around Victoria. That would be a loss to us.
Yes.
I see the grandparents in the park after they've dropped the children off at kindergarten, spending a few hours in the park on a sunny day before they pick them up and walk them home, supporting our young families as they build their home and build their capacity to look after their children. These are short-sighted things. If the opposition leader chooses to do things like that, then he's being short-sighted, he's going to hurt our community. I would always support the members of our community and what they need to make their life easier. And I hear from people all the time about the value that parents coming to Australia for a visit have in supporting families hit that live in my community. So I would be a loud voice inside the Labor caucus to ensure that parent visas are not reduced.
How do you balance compassion and community needs with policy limits?
This is the everyday life of every federal politician and every state politician, really. It is that the balance between what can we do to support the people in our communities, and what do they need, against the national interest in our communities and against the economic imperatives of our community. So you balance that really by looking at case by case. The way I work this, Sharma, is when I'm in a caucus room, when I'm in a policy committee meeting, I try to focus on a family that I know and what this will mean for that family. Yeah? And then my team have before me all the time what I call Lawler's vital statistics. Yeah? So they are things like, how many 0 to 4-year-olds are there in our community? And the answer is, we have the highest number of 0 to 4-year-olds in the country, in Lalor. So that means that our childcare policies really hit home here. That means that cheaper childcare makes a difference to the family budgets of every family that has a 0 to 4-year-old. So, and we've got the highest number in the country. So I try and balance, get in some insight into every family by thinking of a family I know and what that all means. I think that's the best I can answer that.
And you spent years in education before coming into politics. Do you still carry that lens?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I still believe, as I've always believed, the motivator for me to become a teacher, to return to school after I'd already left school, with a view to becoming a teacher, was always to make that difference, because education can change lives. Education is the key to our country, to our economy. Education is the key to people living in harmony with one another. Education is the key to unlocking opportunity for every individual and for our country more broadly. An educated country makes better decisions, positions itself better in the global economy. So the quality education is actually the fundamental that supports our country, and something I'm always very passionate.
And what does leadership means to you, especially as a woman in federal?
Okay, so obviously I'm a very proud member of the first majority female government in Australia's history, something I'm really proud to be a member of, and to be working alongside so many women in our caucus to bring that broad lens, if you like, but also to bring that narrow lens, as I've just described, focusing and zeroing in on families in our communities. I think that female politicians do that really well. Leadership for me, as I say, every year when I do the SRC forums with the student leaders across the electorate, something that I relish doing, and disappointed that this year we haven't done the first one because we're in an election campaign and it's not fair on kids to put them in that position. What I say to those young people is, leadership is not about telling people what to do. Leadership is about influencing people. Leadership is about bringing people with you, convincing them and influencing them about what might be the best path to take. So leadership is never about being a boss. Leadership is always about being a friend.
And what's something people might be surprised to learn about Joanne?
My story, my Anzac story, is based on my grandmother, Kit McNaughton, who was a nurse in World War I. And if you take a drive to Little River and you stop at the Little River Hall, Mechanics Hall, you will see an installation there, a statue with a representation of a nurse, and two names on that installation, one being Kit McNaughton and the other being her cousin, who as young women left our shores and went to Lemnos to support the Australian troops when they were at Gallipoli. And then Kit went to France, where she supported the Australian soldiers, injured Australian soldiers, and worked with them. She then worked from there. She was sent back to England, where an Australian surgeon was the first person in World War I to start doing plastic surgery to rebuild people's faces, soldiers' faces, and she was his theatre nurse. It's an extraordinary thing. She then came back, married my grandfather, Joe Ryan, and had 3 children, one of whom is my dad, of course. She is an inspiration to me every day. Her service, her commitment, like a lot of Australians in World War I, there was part of her that was going off on a grand adventure. But what she learnt of the world and what she gave of herself on that journey stayed with her for life. She came back and fought for nurses' rights, fought for nurses to be paid reasonably. She fought for all of the nurses who'd returned from the war to have their service acknowledged and to have the pensions that were given to the soldiers. She was an extraordinary woman, known locally for many, many years later as Sister Kit. So I suppose people might be surprised that that's the part of my family that I look to the most for my inspiration and where I learn about leadership.
Thanks a lot for sharing that with us and with our listeners. Have you voted?
Not yet. I've been on free poll for 2 days. I find it really difficult to tear myself away from free poll and actually go in and land my vote. But I can guarantee I know who I'm voting for, Shama.
Jen, thanks a lot for giving us your time, and especially when you're so busy. And we'll talk after election.
Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot.